Good morning. Welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this morning. I'm running a poll already. And it's basically, was that a good point for the first game in Europe, or could we have done better? 69% of the people that have voted already are saying yes, it was a good point. 5% are saying no, and 26% are saying that we could have done better. I think that when you see the team that was put out, the fact that Brendan Rodgers, there's lots to talk about this morning. Chris Sutton, Kasper Schmeichel, Inaecho, Dyson Maeda and Rio Hatate. Where do we go with those two players? Just to get started. We'll talk about them in a minute, because we need to talk about, for me, the man of the moment is young Colby Donovan. Donovan came into the game, he kept out an international player in Tony Ralston, and you've got to say, look, Tony Ralston does it for Scotland on a regular basis. I can't think the last time that Tony Ralston was dropped from the Scotland team, but he was dropped for Celtic for the young 19-year-old, a player who's just turned 19, to come in for a big game. He said it was a hard place to come, said the young Celtic starlet. To put me into the start, to put in the performance I did, and to get a point over there is just brilliant, says young Donovan. I'm over the moon. I was a bit of nerves before the game, but you always have nerves as a young player going into a game like this. As soon as I got there, it left me. As soon as I heard the first whistle, I knew it was time to get to work. I love that. Brendan Rodgers said that he took it in his stride. It's a hard place to come. The atmosphere, you could hear the crowd. Look, I thought there was a lot of positives when we seen the stadium wasn't full to capacity. When we seen that it was raining, there was a couple of levellers on the night, and we can all be dismayed. Even Rodgers saying the final third. He keeps saying this at the beginning of every season. The final third. Did we play Dyson Maeda out of position? Is it time to just keep Dyson on the wing? Because let's face it, as much as he scored all those goals last season, I think that even though he was prolific, he's not been an out-and-out striker for Celtic in the whole time that he's been here. And I think that we need to try and get him back onto the wing and get him back into the flow of things. Because as it stands just now, he was offside far too many times. You could see him standing offside. And if you want to play off the shoulder of defenders, you need to move your arse up the pitch a bit. And, Celtic like to hit on the break quick. It was never going to work with Dyson last night, so he was hooked at half-time. Nobody expected Brendan Rodgers to take off Dyson Maeda at half-time. Brendan Rodgers himself said, look, there was a number of players that I could have took off at half-time. I'm glad that he recognised that, because Rio Hatate and his passing was woeful. I think let's just get through the next couple of months and get to the next transfer window, and whatever will happen with Dyson Maeda and Rio Hatate will happen. I just hope that they put in performances that are befitting of people that adorn the Celtic strip, because right now Dyson Maeda will not be remembered well if he keeps on playing like this till the next transfer window. CFC 1888 says Dyson was worse than a man short. Hatate was worse than a man short. Yeah, you could say that quite a few players last night. But Brendan Rodgers picked out one player specifically, Kelechi. What a masterstroke by Brendan Rodgers. He started the game with a 4-3-3 formation. I thought away from home, that formation, I thought when you look back to pre-season, when you look back to the summer, Brendan Rodgers changed the formation to a 4-2-3-1. And I was excited going into this new season. I thought, fantastic, a change of formation, getting away from the old Ange Postecoglou 4-3-3, because let's face it was Ange that came in with the 4-3-3, and Brendan kind of just went with it, putting Kieran Tierney in an inverted fullback. It's not Kieran Tierney's best position. He doesn't do well in that position. He's laboured. He's not getting up the pitch. Putting him in the middle of the pitch isn't getting the best out of Kieran Tierney. So he had to change it at half-time. And by going to the 4-2-3-1, putting Kelechi up front on his own, I thought that was a masterstroke by Brendan Rodgers. Everyone expected maybe Rio Hatate to be taken off, maybe even Callum McGregor. There were so many players that just weren't up to it, but there's one player that was, and that was young Donovan. Brendan Rodgers says, look, the player that was denied the summer move, he says he wasn't at his best, nowhere near it. However, he's a good guy, and sometimes it happens in the game. Brendan, it's been happening far too many times with Dyson Maeda since the summer, and now we know why. And the fact that he had emptied his locker at Celtic, I don't want to go on about the past, and I just think that, you know, Dyson needs to either man up and play the game, or he's not going to get a move to a big club. If he has aspirations to go to the English Premiership for a couple of years and then go back home, you know, that one little big last payday, play at that higher level. Right now, nobody's taken Dyson Maeda on the form that he is. You know, people will look, I mean, Kyogo's now at Birmingham. Let's put that into perspective. These players came in and thought that they were going to go to the big leagues. Kyogo's at Birmingham. Dyson's not going to get an English Premier club. He's not going to get a big move to Europe. Unless he ups his game over the next 3 months, Dyson Maeda will not get the move that he aspires to. And he maybe thought that he was going to get this summer. But anyway, Brendan Rodgers then went on to say, I could have made a couple of changes at half time. I wanted to make one that certainly gives us a greater reference up top and in the front of the pitch. And Kells comes on and he's very good for us. We needed someone who could hold the ball up. We felt that we arrived into the final third in the first half. We'd either lose the ball or didn't hold the ball up well. I think it was formation, Brendan, and you changed it at half-time, and I think that you realised that the formation is the big thing. You know, it was good seeing the three up front playing against the back four, but when Dyson's not in the width of the wingers, you know, everything, it wasn't right for some unknown reason. Anyway, Celtic couldn't build on the goal that they had, conceding from a corner 10 minutes later. It was in Celtic's hands to win last night. I feel disappointed personally because I thought that at Port Chop Express, go and look at the misses that Kyogo's missed in the last couple of games. They're starting to criticise him for not being prolific. He's missing golden opportunities like he did at Celtic. But anyway, it's in the past. People would kill the players, say these these clowns. Let's forget about that. Chris Sutton, let's get on to Chris Sutton because he's a man that just speaks his word when it comes to Celtic. He started off the evening by saying Celtic have played okay, lacked in the final third. How many times are we going to hear that at the beginning of the season? Real lack of connection and understanding and fluency between the midfield and the forwards in the first half. Not on the same wavelength. Set plays looked the almost likely route to goal. Hopefully things will change. And then went on at half time, Maeda off. If he's not injured, I feel for him. A guy who was a revelation playing wide, shoehorned into playing a position he's not comfortable in playing in. So Chris Sutton says he's not comfortable playing in the striker's position. Surely if we play him on the right, it would have been better. 33 goals last season. Bit of a pickle at that Celtic are in. And then he goes on to be brilliant finish from Iniecho. It's a cracking one. And you've got to say, a player that gets a lot of stick, Benji, created the goal, took on the change of formation, allowed Benji in the second half to be a bit more forward thinking, you know, make runs that he was unable to make in the first half, gets past a good 2 or 3 players, passes the ball to feet, and that was the important part. When you look at the game in the first half, we were passing into positions. We were passing into an area and expecting the player to run. Players want it to their feet. Players want it right into their feet. We didn't do that the first half. The ball from Benji right into Kelechi's feet. He takes one touch to control it. He turns, shoots. It's a goal. Fantastic one. Absolutely fantastic. And I thought Celtic at that point, I personally thought, can go on to create an away win. But we didn't. It wasn't in our hands. We kind of toiled going into the last bit of the game. We weren't in control the way we were the sort of first couple of minutes of the second half. But it was a good performance overall. There was a lot of positives to take out of the result. There's a lot of negatives also. People are pinpointing. I mean, people will say Kasper Schmeichel made 2 great saves. On the other hand, you've got Sinisalo would have made the same saves. So let's not belittle Sinisalo. I think what Sinisalo brings to the game is a more direct. I think that Kasper slowed the game down when they were on the ascendancy and the keeper gets the ball. Say a corner, we get the ball. He holds on to it too long. It's where good Celtic keepers and good Celtic teams from those positions. If you look at all the goals that Henrik Larsson scored and you know, Samaras scored. If you look at Odsonne Edouard, the majority of the goals came from Celtic defending corners and then the quick break out. When you get the quick break out, Kasper holds on to the ball too long. Indecisive on where to pass it. The young Sinisalo, he doesn't like playing it outsidewards. We need to be a bit more direct at opportunities like that. The good old-fashioned Celtic way. You know, we're defending the corner, we get the ball, we get a quick breakout, we run out the pitch, goal, score, boom, if you forget about the corner, happy days, fans go wild, and then we move on to the next one. And then we start building that confidence. You've got players like Yang that we're wanting away. You know, he comes in and he does his best, but you've got to say, Dai's Maeda. Paul gets this one absolutely right. Dai's not interested anymore. Get someone else in the middle, and Sinisalo is quicker to get the ball out. Yep, he is that. Just picking holes in Kasper. You could pick holes in any of the players. Yes, I do that. But, Jinky, I have been an advocate of Sinisalo since last season. I'm not picking this in one individual game. I said before the cup final that Sinisalo should have kept his place for the cup final. And I still stand by that. And the forum that young boy has been on, that young keeper, there's an air of confidence about him. There's an air of... There's something that a younger player has that when you get to Kasper's age, you lose. And that's just an age thing. Do you know? And you can talk about experience and fucking levels and all the rest, but you've got to talk on form. And over the past... Since before the cup final back in May, the on-form keeper was Sinisalo. You know, I'm not saying that he's a bad keeper. I just think that the way that Celtic can play and should play is quick out for the back in positions like that. Allowing the team to then get back and defend is criminal. You know, and this is why we're not scoring the goals. We're not getting the ball out quick enough. But it is what it is. When it comes to it, it was a good night. Brendan Rodgers, although we did concede 10 minutes after scoring. It's a good point, Brendan Rodgers says. The squad of players and us coming here. He says, when you come here for a team that has won 7 out of 7 or something, it was a good point. Coming to Belgrade is always tough. They weren't as good as what I thought they were going to be. And I did say in the pre-match game, the team news game, I said 1-1. I said 1-1 would be a fantastic result, but I really expected them to be better. When you look at the teams that we played in the Champions League last year, and this maybe is an incitement, this is maybe how far Celtic have regressed since we played Bayern Munich at the beginning of this calendar year. It's maybe a statement of how we've went backwards as a team. Maybe that's the issue. We're not as good as we were the second half of last year. We're definitely not as good as we were in the Champions League last year. And maybe that's what we should be looking at. Anyway, we had opportunities in the second half. We showed great resilience and showed moments of quality, says Brendan Rodgers. Kells was absolutely outstanding. We had other moments in that. But we need to be more proactive in the game. Overall, it was a nice first step for us in this competition. As it stands just now, Celtic are in a good position when it comes to the league. When it comes to the table, we were knocked down a position late on last night. We're currently sitting in 9th position, which is just outside the automatic qualification. My target for Celtic is to finish in the top 8. Now, it's not going to be easy, but I think that if we can just win 3 or 4 games, I think it could be possible. Getting knocked down by Real Betis, who scored late on to jump up an unbelievable amount of positions, because at one point Real Betis were something like 30th in the league. So it just shows you how you can jump up a load of positions. Tonight it'll be interesting to see what the score lines are and where Celtic ultimately end up, because that gives you an idea on what we need to try and achieve going forward. The next couple of games, we definitely need to win those at home, and then we need to start thinking about, I hope that Brendan Rodgers takes heed from the performance and the change of formation, because we went through pre-season playing the 4-2-3-1 and I was excited about it, but then when we get into the season proper, we revert back to the old 4-3-3, and that then puts pressure on the defenders. It puts pressure on Cameron Carter-Vickers. It puts pressure on Liam Scales, because the 3 midfielders are all over the place. At least when you've got 2 sitting holding midfielders, it gives you a point to get to then turn around and attack. There was a lot, you were attacking midfielders last night that were scared to attack, scared to take the ball and turn around and run at people. Maybe it's time for Luke McCown to come in. Maybe it's time for Paulo Bernardo to come in. There's so many questions that need asked after this. Brendan Rodgers and the team would have flew back after the game last night. They'll wake up in their own beds this morning and reflect on an interesting game of football. There's one lad that's probably going to wake up and feel like he's probably had the best hit of his life. And is quite rightly so. Should be all about Donovan. He's the future of the club, an absolutely fantastic player. What does it say for Tony Ralston? Can he come straight back into the team this weekend? I'd keep Donovan in the team. And there's one thing for sure, when Alistair Johnston comes back, it's going to be even a little bit more interesting, because Alistair Johnston's just that little bit more direct. Anyway, that's me done and dusted for this morning. Let's end the poll. 148 votes. Was that a good point? Tell me in the comments if you're watching this back. Was it a good point for the first game? 68% on the live said yes. Could have done better was 29%. And no was 3%. If you don't think it was a good point, tell me why in the comment section. On that note, have a fantastic season. Have a fantastic day. I think it's going to be an interesting season. And I think that we can, if we just this a little bit more in this Europa, I think that we can go places. Have a fantastic day, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world.